Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our paper presentation entitled Identifying the Opportunities and Challenges to Black and African American Undergraduate Students' Information Literacy Development. On this slide, we have pictures and some author information. My name is Amanda Folk, and I am an assistant professor and head of teaching and learning at The Ohio State University Libraries. Tracey, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Tracey Overbey, and I'm an assistant professor, human science and sociology librarian at the Ohio State University Libraries. So we'll dive right on in. So our statement of problem here is that assessments of information literacy within particular courses, disciplines, institutions, or across institutions typically provide a snapshot of students' information literacy, but also have the potential to contribute to an understanding of the ways in which students develop their information literacy. However, there are significant limitations to what we currently know about students' information literacy and how it develops, particularly in terms of students' race and ethnicity. This paper seeks to provide a foundation for addressing a specific limitation within the higher education context in the United States. An exploration of the potential opportunities and challenges related to Black and African American students' development of information literacy skills. Though we cannot resolve this limitation in a single paper, we hope that it will serve as a foundation for additional research and theory related to the longitudinal development of information literacy for college students whose identities have traditionally been marginalized within educational settings.
In addition, we know that academic librarianship in the United States is overwhelmingly white in terms of race, and many institutions of higher education completely excluded Black and African American students until relatively recently, the 1970s. As a result of that, significant gaps between the educational outcomes of students of color and white students remain. In addition, race and ethnicity are strikingly absent from our guiding document, the Framework for Information Literacy for Higher Education. Indeed, Tracey D. Hall, who is now the executive director of the American Library Association, once wrote that, quote, "The library and information science field has seemingly slapped itself with a gag order about race and racism. While the discussion of diversity in libraries has proliferated over the past few decades, meaningful dialogue around race has been eviscerated or altogether evaded. In general, white people in the United States prefer to evade uncomfortable discussions about race. However, these discussions are essential if we're going to create equitable learning environments for all students."
Many factors can contribute to the sharing of information towards this population within libraries. One can be stereotypes passed down to white librarians about this population. Other factors are environmental, segregated neighborhoods, where many white librarians don't live around Black and African American populations. The school to prison pipeline, zero behavior policies that limit Black and African American students from making any mistakes or acting out like children and youth may do, is considered a threatening and criminal behavior compared to white children and youth. Some of these factors may contribute and limit white educators within schools to expose this population to information literacy. Fear of the Black man, fear of the Black female is angry. These paradigms may cause many educators that are white not to share these resources. So the important question is, in this paper, we explore what factors might enable or constrain the development of Black and African American students' information literacy.
To do that, we draw upon data that have been collected from two different studies. The first study is an exploration of library experiences of Black and African American students, which Tracey and I collaboratively conducted over the past couple of years. We'll refer to this study as the Library Experiences Study. The second study is one that explores first-generation college students and their experiences with research assignments that I conducted a couple of years ago. We'll refer to that study as the Research Assignment Study. Both of these studies relied upon Seidman's phenomenological interviewing to develop a semi-structured interview protocol that was used for data collection to learn about the students' experiences over a period of time, rather than at a single point in time. The purpose of phenomenological interviewing is to understand the lived experience of other people and the meaning they make of that experience.
So the method with the library experience study, we did a 60-minute interview with 15 Black or African-American undergraduate students enrolled at The Ohio State University, and we provided a $15 gift card from Target.
For the research assignment study, I conducted interviews lasting up to 75 minutes with 30 undergraduate students, 6 of whom self-identified as Black or African-American, and they were enrolled at 2 regional campuses of a research university that was not Ohio State. Participants in that study received a $25 gift card for participation. There were generally 2 emergent themes when we looked at this data collectively. One, the importance of the ability for students to access information related to college level expectations for information literacy and overall academic performance. And the second was the potential role of motivation in developing students' information literacy. These findings are rooted in the belief that information literacy is situated within particular contexts and therefore is both contextual and social in nature. Because of this, the findings mostly consider how students develop the skills and ways of thinking necessary to be successful in their university level academic work, including the relationships that they are able to build with others that will help support their development.
For the first emergent theme, we identified 3 sub-themes in the data: high school preparation, library use, and interactions with librarians and library staff.
In both studies, high school preparation related to research assignments and information literacy proved to be both an opportunity and a challenge. The Black and African American students in both studies did not have uniform preparatory experiences related to research assignments and the development of their information literacy prior to college. Although almost all of the Black and African American students in both studies had to complete research assignments in high school, only a few of these students felt that they had solid foundational skills on which they could build when they got to college. So now we're going to provide a couple of examples of this in the students' own words. Layla had a relatively positive experience in transitioning what she had done in high school to her new collegiate environment. So she shared that when she was working on a research project in an honors course in her first year of college, she went to the library website and recognized that they had databases that were similar to what she had done in high school. So she was able to take the skills that she had used in research assignments in high school and apply them now to her new college environment. Oops. On the other hand, Tahuti and Destiny noted that the expectations and the stakes were a little bit different in college than they were in high school. And so Tahuti noted that in college, the research assignment experience was more independent, whereas in high school, they kind of held the students' hands and told them exactly what they needed to do. In college, the instructors assigned the assignment and then expected that the students would go off and complete the research and write their papers on their own. Destiny said it's a little bit more stressful in college because she feels like the stakes were higher and that the teachers are more strict than the ones in high school. She felt that her high school teachers were a little bit more lenient, but she wanted to really do well on these assignments because it affected her GPA and her overall success in college.
On the one hand, the fact that these students regularly visited their university library for the purpose of learning, thinking, and completing their academic work is an opportunity for developing their information literacy, as getting them into library spaces does not seem to be a challenge. However, this narrow view of library as study spaces serve as a potential challenge to the development of Black and African American students' information literacy. Developing relationships with librarians provides both opportunities and challenges for the development of Black and African American students' information literacy. On the one hand, some students value the relationship that they develop with learning centers, staff, and tutors, who, like many librarians, provide students with academic support. On the other hand, most of the students in both studies had not interacted with academic librarians or developed meaningful relationships with their academic librarians, meaning that this student population in general was not taking advantage of the support that academic libraries could provide to them through their expert staff and faculty and student-oriented services. Interactions with librarians and library staff, examples. When asked about the kinds of expertise that librarians might have, Jalen shared, I mean, you telling me that there's a department librarian? That's news to me. I never expected them to do a lot for me except check out books. Destiny thought that librarians' primary duties included getting books ready to go on the shelves, including affixed barcodes and entering data in the library software. These examples are about not knowing what librarians do or how they could help. Interactions with librarians and library staff, examples. Imani shared, the few experiences I had with Black staff librarians has always been phenomenal. I feel like the Black staff at libraries like to see Black students are reading and learning and trying to gain and acquire knowledge. So they are encouraging, just like, do you need help with anything? Or, so good to see you in here, please come back. But they are not overly represented in the profession, Black librarians. So this is something that we need to focus on recruitment and retainment.
Another opportunity that was identified in the research assignment study is the potential role of motivation in helping all students. And this was particularly apparent in the experiences of Black and African American students in the study. This finding has been fleshed out in a bit more depth in another publication, but it's important to provide a brief overview here so as not to be overlooked as a potential opportunity for the development of this student population's information literacy. As reported in a previous publication, the orientation that a student exhibited toward their research assignment seemed to be related to the incorporation of the dispositions and knowledge practices associated with information literacy into their academic work. A learning orientation, which is when students demonstrated an intrinsic desire to learn more about their topics, was critical for the incorporation of information literacy into their research assignment. This was especially true for the Black and African American students in the study, with 5 of the 6 students discussing research assignments toward which they had a learning orientation. For these students, these topics were primarily related to their identities or lived experiences as Blacks and African Americans, but also topics related to their professional aspirations. Among Black and African American communities in the United States, it is well known that Black and African American students must work twice as hard to achieve the same as white students. In addition, Black and African American students are often stereotyped and tokenized by their teachers and peers. While we did not collect data related specifically to these topics, some of the student interviews provide evidence that they may have been trying to create counter narratives through their research assignments in college.
Based on our initial exploration of the factors that might enable or constrain the development of Black and African American undergraduate students. Information literacy, these are some of the potential enablers or constraints that we have identified. Additional rigorous and equity-minded research is necessary to determine if these are indeed enablers or constraints, as well as identify other opportunities for supporting Black and African American students learning at the university. Before we close, we want to highlight one of the potential constraints identified in these studies. The potential role of race and the lack of engagement with librarians and library staff should not be overlooked. Students reported having mixed experience with white librarians and staff prior to and during college. Though the few students who had interacted with librarians and library staff of color reported positive and supportive interactions. The lack of diversity among academic librarians in the United States should be considered to be a possible constraint to the development of students' information literacy. If we are genuinely committed to students' learning and success, then we need to take seriously the urgent need to create a welcoming and inclusive profession for librarians of color.
We'd like to thank you for spending some time with us today and listening to the findings of our paper. On this slide, we have our Ohio State email addresses, and you're welcome to reach out to us with any questions that you have. We also have a link to the slide deck from today's presentation if you would like to revisit the slides at any point after the conference. We hope you have a great conference, and thank you again.